Welcome to another video in this series of Better Riding. Today we're going to look at left-hand bends. I'm joined by Saffron from MCN, so let's get into it.
So as a motorcyclist, I'm coming up to a left-hand bend. What do I need to do in order to do it correctly?
So we know about positioning. We know position 3 out to the crown of the road would improve our view into the bend and other traffic will see us. So we're now into the realm of risk versus reward. The reward is improved vision. The risk is you're now quite close to oncoming traffic. How do you play that game? Think about some of the bigger vehicles that are coming along the road. The coaches, the lorries, the big wing mirrors. Think about the hot hatch, who, if he's coming around his right-hand bend and he's driving a bit too quickly, that vehicle might be likely to cut the corner a little bit. So there is a trade that you as a rider need to sort of negotiate in your own brain. How far out shall I be to develop the view? When I'm coaching, we often talk about something at the side of the road, and then quite often I'll give it a phrase so that we might have a whole 5-minute conversation about something. And then on the radio that we use, I can use a couple of words and the client knows exactly what I'm talking about. I use the phrase, rhetorical question, how far out? And that is really, it's posing that rhetorical question to the client in front. You decide now, do you want to develop the view really quite well here? Do you want to bring it back a little bit? What's your choice in positioning on your way in that will give you the best possible reward versus the risk of that? Worthy of comment, I think, is you've got main roads, often with paint down the middle, and you've got smaller, narrower roads, often without paint in the middle. For me, I find that the wide roads, that paint sort of is a bit of a self-governor. I'm not saying I never go the other side of the paint to develop a view, but you know, that paintwork will sort of keep your boundaries a little bit. An interesting one to talk about is the narrower stuff. There's no paintwork, and sometimes if your vision is good and your curious brain is investigating the view, you can lure yourself into the sort of false sense of great view. Oh, I am well out on the other side of the road here and I've not really given it much thought. Something comes around the corner and suddenly you're like, whoa, back here. And now you've probably just ruined your line, and you're probably on a worse line because you've had to bring it in so violently and abruptly, and the oncoming car is eyes on stalks. So on the narrower stuff where there's no paintwork, really monitor that rhetorical question for you. How far out shall I go here? What's my trade? So that's a good one, I think.
And what about on the way out of a corner?
The talking point has got to be running wide. We're talking about left-hand bends, and it goes without saying it could be the worst possible outcome. So if I travel into a bend just too quickly and or take the wrong line, and I'm on that very old-fashioned racing line where I've peeled in early because I'm probably a little bit too quick, your big threat, your big danger is that you run wide on your exit. So often, you know, quite a common theme is that you don't get into trouble with the car here coming into the bend. You're going to get into trouble with the car over there on your exit. And as you sort of apex it badly because you're on the wrong line, and then you run wide there, that's the moment where, whoa, oncoming car, and I've really frightened myself. So, you know, the answer to that is your speed and your line and the control that you get going in so that you don't run wide on your exit. That's the big important thing there.
So you've mentioned a couple of mistakes that we can make, but what other things can people do?
Common sense and flexibility. A lot of people enjoy learning and good principles of riding, and sometimes you can be a bit of a slave to that. You can learn the rule book and then, well, that's what you're going to do. And, you know, it might be that you're in your wonderful position 3, which on paper is the right place to be, but there's a lorry coming, there's a coach coming. Have the flexibility and the common sense to understand that there are rules, there are good practices, that there are, you know, the correct line, but you may not always want to be on it, and you might want to be a little bit flexible and sometimes give something up in that scenario. A good example of that is often wet weather. And you know how the cars can polish the floor, and you can get this wonderful grippy, chippy line in the middle, and either side of that is shiny, shiny polish. Sometimes you would follow a rider into a bend and they're all the shiny, shiny polish, and I'm thinking, okay, that's the rule book, and on paper it's the right place, but you know what? I'd be on the grip and I'd be on the better line in the middle of the road. So it's flexibility and a little bit of common sense about the rule book, I think.
So say somebody hasn't seen this video and it goes really wrong and they've come out this bend, they're in the wrong position and they're scared. What do you do then?
So there are lots of symptoms of getting it really wrong, and it's a horrible feeling, and you know I've been there. The symptoms of getting it wrong badly, we could talk about target fixation, and that's where your eyes stare at the problem that you've got in front of you, oncoming car, oncoming lorry, you're running a little bit wide on your left-hander, and you just can't help but fixate on the very thing that you don't want to hit. That would be one of them. Tension in your body and that awful feeling of, I've got this wrong. Where does all that tension manifest itself? Arms and shoulders often. What will that affect? The steering of the bike. So you get this vicious circle where you stare at what you don't want to hit, your arms freeze, and there's only one place that you're going now, and it's sort of straight on. So we really, really want to avoid that. There's 2 tips, I think. One is understand target fixation. Understand, we've all heard it, you go where you look. That if you stare at that oncoming car because you're in a bit quick and you're on a bit of a bad line, do your best to turn your head and don't look at that car and throw your head into where you want to go. And that will do a lot to help drag the bike around the bend. And the other thing is this tension in your arms. I have been there, I have done that myself, and I sort of learnt many years ago, drive tension into your legs, grip the tank, squeeze the tank, but don't send that tension into your arms. So I sort of learnt, put my head there when I've got it wrong, keep your arms free when you've got it wrong, squeeze the tank instead, and that will do a lot to help you look, steer, put the bike round the corner, rather than this stare at the oncoming, freeze your arms, you're only going one way. Another aspect of getting your corner wrong is rushing into it and then having a bad exit. So we've all heard as bikers, slow in, fast out. Prioritize your exit. Don't try and prioritize your entry. That's the bit that should be really quite conservative, and it's your exit and you're standing the bike up and getting a really good drive out the corner. It's a cliche, but it's always slow in, fast out.
So one of the questions we were asking ourselves is, how far out should you go? And how do you manage the risk of the reward of getting a better view versus the risk of oncoming traffic? And one of the things that we were saying was that quite often the paintwork down the middle of the wider roads can really be quite helpful in letting you govern your sort of lane discipline, for want of a better word. I'm not saying that I would never go the other side of the paintwork, but it is a pretty good benchmark of how much of my lane am I going to use to develop my view. So I'm coming into a left here, I've got a nice position, I'm following that limit point, watching it unravel, and then I can pick up this near side into the right hand bend. Over the hedgerows, I'm sort of working out that after this right, I go into a left. So the white paintwork is sort of governing my sense of where shall I be within my lane? I've looked over the brow. Can you see that if I deliberately peel in early like this, can you see how it runs me out wide on my exit? So there's a degree of discipline. And we were talking with Saffron about don't run in too hot. So if you do run into a bend too quickly, it's very likely that you'll do this and you'll peel in and then, whoa, that's your problem there, because you run wide on your exit. And that's where you're going to come into grief with oncoming traffic. So we were making a big thing with Saffron about control your speed going in. Don't let your speed run away going in. Oh, here's a good example. Do I pinch just an inch of that side of the road, straighten the bike up, keep it upright, and arrive here? Now, in that particular example there, I felt it was safe to do so. I wasn't compromising anything, wasn't putting myself or anybody at risk, and it was a fine decision to do that as a motorcyclist. Would I manage that differently if there was traffic behind me that I don't want to confuse, or oncoming traffic? Yeah, I would manage it completely differently.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that video on left-hand bends. Join us again next time when we'll look at another aspect of better riding.